So I think maybe I'll start with WEF. I was here, I've been here coming for many, many years. And I will go back to 2019 or 2020, because I think that was an interesting inflection point. When we were talking about globalization, trade, the world was going in a trajectory of globalization and trade until 2020. And then I think a lot of things happened over the last 4 years that have moved us globally away from that trajectory. COVID, obviously, and the pandemic moved towards protectionism on supply chains, changed the thinking of how the world thinks and how countries think about supply chains and about protecting, obviously, their industries. Then you had, obviously, war in Europe, Russia, Ukraine, and what that ended up spinning over in terms of commodities, the challenge of energy in Europe and commodities all around the world. And of course, that created another security slash supply chain slash commodity reality that, again, was fighting trade and fighting globalization. You have the two largest economies in the world going through over the last, again, particularly over the last 3 years, 4 years, again, a very challenging relationship. And then now you have the war in the Middle East. So you have all of these events happening, leading to a push away from globalization and away from trade, which I think, as a capitalist, as a chief executive of an investment sovereign fund, a fund coming from the UAE that is, basically at the heart of trade and globalization. Our ethos, our DNA in the UAE is about trade and it's about globalization. As an investor that invests east, west, north, south, we have been operating in that domain. Now, I have to draw an analogy at this point back to the UAE. What did the UAE do in that same 4-year period? On trade, I think the UAE did more trade agreements in that 4-year period than any other country in the world. From trade agreements with big economies like India, Turkey, Indonesia, massive trade deals, bilateral trade deals, which again, I think helped the UAE in that shift that's happening globally, positioned the UAE, I think, very, very well. And at the same time, I think we maintain, a globalization push by keeping the UAE as a hub for trade and business, by maintaining connectivity, investing in these large economies. And then, I think as an investor, and I come back to my point, and I'm looking at the watch because I want to stick to your rules of 3 minutes, we as an investor, looking at how we can invest in that supply chain across the board, be it in energy transition, be it in technology, in data centers, digital technology, digital infrastructure, and how we can help unlock this, this challenge, which is a challenge from one perspective, but from our perspective as investors, a huge opportunity, which, by the way, matches very well because we are doing our part in helping unlock challenges that help growth, build up demand, and ultimately, just to conclude, I think my firm, or our firm belief in the UAE, and my firm view also with that is, with economic development comes prosperity, with prosperity comes stability, with stability, ultimately you have peace. 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I think you deserve an applause for that one.
Oh, I get an applause.
You mentioned bilateral trade agreements, and we've seen a lot more of that in the last years, and also mega regional trade agreements. Do you think that of course, it can end like in a spaghetti bowl, so it can be very complex. But at the same time, it can also inspire these nations to then form coalitions that later can be formalized under the WTO.
Listen, I think the way I will address this is, I think there needs a mindset, there's a mindset shift that needs to happen. Because I've seen over these last couple of years, the politics has changed globally. And I think there needs to somehow a shift back in the mindset where trade and globalization is embraced, and embraced politically, where trade and globalization is supported. Now, obviously, that means you need a bit more stability in the world. But, it's a chicken and egg. There's that catch-22, what comes first? We can debate what comes first, but at the end of the day, it needs to happen. And my views is we have to push for finding avenues to allow back that principle of trade, globalization, supply chains, bringing back trust, putting mechanics and frameworks in place that allow that confidence and trust to come back into the systems. That will help the world and will help the efficiency of these flows, by the way, south, north, east, and west.
This notion of friendshoring is partly happening, at least nearshoring. We used to say just in time, but now we say also just in case. That's also putting a little bit more inflationary pressure under this. But how is the UAE? Do you see any friendshoring to you? Are you able to navigate between the G2 and the other strong forces?
Yes, I mean, listen, the UAE has to play a part. We're obviously, the world is very big, and we're a country that has to also, within the constraints of our size and our geography and our region. But I think we're trying hard to do our best in that space. I think one of the areas, there's two areas we're spending a lot of time on. Obviously, energy transition, and that's a space which I think there's tremendous benefits for the whole world. We're investing a lot of capital in the generational side of energy transition, but also on the supply chain aspect of it. The other, which is I think going to be very exciting going forward, and it's been the theme of WEF this year, is AI. But I think rather than debating the technology aspect of it, when are we going to get to generative AI, what it needs in terms of compute power, in terms of chip power, in terms of, I'm going to tackle it from a different angle, which is on a key component of how we get to generative AI, which is the infrastructure / energy transition / data center infrastructure needed for it. The data center side, and I'm just going to spend a minute on this. Today, you have the global capacity of data centers built today is about between 55 to 60 gigawatts globally. That's it. We are in 2024. That is what you have globally. Just this space alone is going to require, over the next 10 years, for this infrastructure, no less than, depending on what assumptions you're going to take, 200 to 400 gigawatts. That's the range. Obviously, it's a wide range, but it's a huge range. In the bottom end of that range, 200 gigawatts, just imagine the level of investment required in terms of data centers globally. And what that needs in terms of energy, and by the way, that energy, it's needed in the form of clean energy. So that's going to have to come basically from nuclear, solar, wind, geothermal. So there is an unbelievable demand story that's going to be built up over the next years, but not 30, 40 years. We're talking in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. And I think that's a very important opportunity, which, if we grasp, will help everything we talked about, globalization, because it will only work effectively in a globalization perspective, with countries working together, corporations and investment institutions like ourselves working together and being efficient.
Thank you, Khaldun. Let me then go to